Hi there. Let me address something before we begin here. It's a little bit of a what the hell moment, but not at the people you think I'm gonna give it to. Last week came in a little bit of a fire as the translation from one familiar site was not the same as another site that apparently translate on how it would be if it was released in manga volumes. Due to that, a lot of people, including me, got things misunderstanding. However, what you think I'm saying is that I'm not giving the what the hell to the site who translate wrong. No, I'm giving it to the people that couldn't stop complaining. Because a lot of people came under fire, threw fire at me for I had read the wrong translation and therefore caused this misunderstanding. Look, I read what I read, okay? And I sometimes prefer the false translation only because it had a little bit more bigger sound things and also had that openings about that. Yes, it may not have been right, but come on, I only read what I read. And I am not a scripter, okay? So if you complain on what I talk about, I only say what I want to say. And if you don't like it, then you don't like it. I don't see you being a translator. I don't speak Japanese. So I cannot say which one is the better or anything else. If I was a translator, I would have translated myself Kimi wa number no 008. Alas, I'm not. So and now it's even noted that the regular translation on that site wasn't even on the site I normally read on. And I'm not going to tell what that site is because, well, I guess it's not so surprising though. They came under fire. But it can't be easy being translation. Okay, now that we have now that we have complained about that for way longer than it was actually intended to be, let's jump into the Eden Zero chapter 64 from me, the angry anime fan. Rebecca faces off against Nino, who, if this translation is correct, apparently has an ether gear called Soul Arm. And I'm only saying the translation right because, well, part of me actually wondered, was that really what it was? At first I thought it was ether mechanical arms, but then again it appeared behind him, so maybe it is an ether gear. I do not know. Either way, he once again says that if you don't fight me, the universe can't be saved. And Wisely cannot open the lock because, well, he is out of ether. Again, we do not know how ether gear really works so far. We know that ether is inside someone's body, and we know that it can run out but then can also be replenished. It's not exactly an explanation on how that is yet, although given Hiromashima it's very likely that we won't get an explanation. We only get what we want to get, and then we have to, well, take our own suggestions of that. And note that that is not a criticizing in that thing. I mean, granted, I like explanations, but some mangas do not go that route. You have to. Sorry, I just had something that. You have to get your own things to do that. So, well, he attacks Rebecca, who dodges a punch, leaves a crater. It creates a little unintentional funny moment when Zeno says he will only knock her out. When he says he's holding back. He can even use his giant arms to block Rebecca's guns. It's a little bit strange since Rebecca seems to have been implied to have extremely mad aiming skills. So, shouldn't she be aiming for the head? Granted, however, the arms may have protected the head, but it could very well be the shock of fighting another beekeeper like Nino took off her aim a little bit. However, then Nino actually says a line that makes Rebecca drop her guard. Guns don't work on me. And then she suddenly takes the hit from the ether arms, and It's unknown exactly how much of damage that would have done. And I'm saying would have done because in these situations, Rebecca seems to put two things together. Something I've actually failed to do. Nino's line, "guns don't work on me," has actually said before, and ironically, just by another beekeeper. And who was that beekeeper? Well, it was that dorky looking boxing guy that wanted to melt Rebecca's clothing. But that is not really the real foreshadowing. Do you all remember the Battle Coliseum? Xiao Mei made the troops fight because, well, that was she didn't know how the fights would turn out, so she needs to have some of her satisfying see. But it turns out every single fight there was a nod to the future. Xiao Mei can see the future. And a lot of the fights that they had in the Colosseum was meant to show what they were going to do in later. Case in point, Weiss fought against an alien that had speed as his weapon and on his fleet, which was very similar to the divine heavenly guardian that fight using his speed. And Shiki fought against only a speedo wielding doofus guy with not only a dashing mustache but also a metal body. And who is he fighting now? Well, none other than someone in a metal body. Granted, however, that metal body is way tougher and way bigger than the real metal fiend Shiki fought before, but it's still metal. And we even see a brief shot of him doing that, despite having broken his arm, because here is where the translations actually differed and were wrong. What I also said was wrong. I thought he used willpower to break through the armor of the machine. But it turns out it wasn't exactly as simple as that. The real translation said that he prepared to punch the fiend with an arm coated with his ether gear, but just as he made contact he deactivated it, and therefore used, well, I guess, the speed and the combined weight with his arm strength alone, and thus he broke his real arm. He didn't break through the ether gear armor at that time with willpower alone. He used more of a uh, it was more of a how do you say, combined effort, something like that. It wasn't the word I was looking for, but I can't really focus my head right now. Granted, that still is a little bit of a willpower, but it's there that a lot of people fired. I want to say fired me because, well, if I caused confusion as well. So, well, Madame Kurenai, let's just call her Madame Kurenai for now. Feels like this doesn't make sense. Well, she hasn't seen someone who actually willing to fight. She calls that stupidity. I call that dedication. And but back to Rebecca's situation, she realizes that Xiao Mei knew that that Valkyrie would be dead, even though she says that the future can always be changed. But she has also said to us, the future can be changed. I love that phrase. She knew that Valkyrie was already dead, meaning that the fight against the Valkyrie copy wasn't to traumatize Homura, nor was it for, well, yes, simple joy. It was simple to see Valkyrie one last time. It was foreshadowing on what they are fighting right now. And also of fighting the feet. And in that moment, before Rebecca can hit the ground and perhaps die, who knows, suddenly an ether gear appears on her feet as time seems to rewind. Or is it? Well, it's difficult to actually 100% say. But Rebecca seems to feel like time is going backwards, and all the ether in her body is rushing to her feet. And just when the arm is about to make contact again, the Rebecca leap backwards on exactly almost the same way when if she would have been punched by the ether gear. So and even though Rebecca is unsure of it at all, she moves forward, and then she distracts Nino with saying, "Wobble wobble Ruby wobble," season 2 episode 6. Ruby gets kicked by Ruby and it's knocked back to his senses, which is actually a foreshadowing again. Nino said that Anime will save the world. So, well, I guess Rebecca will save him by delivering a powerful kick that is a combination of the ether gear power and, well, her regular strength, knocking out Nino. Okay, this is where people make complaints, saying, "Oh, another one-hit KO." Look, people, it wasn't just a one-hit KO. If you think about it, if Nino had succeeded with the punch, mind you, then he would have one-hit KO'd Rebecca. So if you're complaining that this is a one-hit KO, why are you not gonna complain that Nino would have actually killed Rebecca with one-hit KO? Actually, you wouldn't, because that would have been a villain one-hit KO. So stop complaining about one-hit KO about it all. Because this was an ether kick. It is not a regular kick. It is almost the same kind of kick that Rebecca did to the previous YouTuber, Abi Kubir. Except this was a sidekick. And since it's an ether kick, it has much more power. So, with that, Nino is defeated, as he proclaims he liked the manga better of the things else, but so says Rebecca. I guess that's a nod to us who prefer to read manga before seeing the anime due to reasons. The lock opens, and Rebecca has now officially gained her ether gear. As we all remember, her constant bathing in the place was enough, and she now can move at a speed that seems to be faster than Arsenal. Uh, it gives her the power to jump or leap, therefore she called it Leaper. Well, Shiki still hasn't named his ether gear, mind you, but Rebecca was kind of fast in learning that power. As we briefly says Xiao Mei, who is still narrating Shiki and Ko's adventure, she says that Rebecca has now awakened the Leaper power at last, but she had only begun to unleash the secret of the Leap's real power, because this power may truly one day save the universe. Which is may even be that even though Nino didn't know anything about the power, he may also have foreshadowed that if you can't fight me, you won't save the universe. So yeah, that's basically the chapter, and this review actually was a lot longer than I wanted it to be. Granted, however, most of it was the rant on the previous thing, so it makes sense. Also, there was one thing though that caused a lot of confusion. When Rebecca first began to awaken that power, she didn't use this kind of power. She only fired an ether blast. However, I actually think that there's a point to that. Note that the ether gear got on her feet and didn't look anything like the markings that got on her body when she bathed in the bath. I actually think that what she unleashed with her arm there wasn't the beginning. Well, it was the beginning of her ether gear, but it wasn't what her ether gear became. It was only raw ether. What she fired from that blast wasn't what her ether gear would have become. It was actually only her raw ether. Because this, if you think about it, makes happy blasters still valid. When we saw that ether blast from her arm, we all but assumed, oh, does this mean she won't have to use her happy blasters anymore? Because if you think about it, if you had a blast from the arm, wouldn't that make happy blasters redundant? Well, this seems to take their excuse away, meaning that happy blasters are still valid, which is a good thing. But I did not really expect it to be something like leaping. And again, it's not exactly 100% explained what it is, but it seems that she can leap through and backwards through time, but not necessarily, well, how do you explain this without sounding confusing? Uh, Not necessarily does it mean that she can move forward into the future. Does that make sense? I mean, again, people, it's time. I cannot explain time. But what I understand this power to be is that yes, she could jump backwards in time. She was punched by Nino, but then she leaped backwards before that punch also came in. And before the punch was again gonna hit, she leaped backwards in exactly the same way if she would have gotten punched. Only this time it was more of an evading. And according to Xiao Mei, this power will one day save the universe. So what I'm trying to ask is this the power that can bring back Valkyrie? Granted, however, what Rebecca just used was only a couple of seconds, and Valkyrie has been dead for years. So, maybe not. But yeah, this is this chapter. And because of the official translation, there is no nod on what next week's chapter is called. I read somewhere that it was going to be called The Swordsman Standing Still or something. I think that means that we are going to go back to Homura. And she's still in her heroic BSOD. But maybe that chapter will end with Homura standing up. So yeah, this is basically the chapter. All about Rebecca. But she is very smart. She is smarter than she looks. And she really does show that she has an analytic mind. So I really liked it there. I know she would use her ether gear. I just didn't expect her ether gear to be something like this. So give me your thoughts if you have any.